welcome everybody to our first webinar of the year on intelligent robots for utilities. And we are joined today by IBM, Kay Murphy from IBM. And we will be talking about how robotics can potentially increase your plant's resiliency and improve your return on investment. And we will probably spend about 20 minutes on a presentation. There'll be questions, and then we'll have kind of a more of a panel setting and have a discussion around various topics where the audience is more than welcome to submit questions via chat, for example. And for now, what I'd like to do is just kind of give a quick introduction to this event, but also to what we do at Certrec and why IBM and Certrec are partnering up with helping customers, go in this direction. So the agenda is that we'll really do the quick introduction, IBM introduction to Spot. There'll be a little video, so make sure your volume is on, you can hear things properly, and then Kay will go through explaining the value of using IBM Spot, the questions, then we'll have the expert panel piece, and then we'll have Q&A and conclusions. So let me just start briefly by introducing Certrec. Certrec has been around for over 30 years. It's a company that grew from the compliance and regulatory space and is an expert in SaaS applications and services in the compliance and regulatory space, especially for power plants, energy, power plants, utilities, nuclear, solar, hydro, the whole gamut. We also have been doing a lot of work in digitization. So we have software that enables utilities to digitize some of their licensing processes and other processes. And the work with IBM really falls right into that digitization piece. And then the third piece that we've been working on is the IT managed services and cybersecurity services, where we use best of breed software and other technologies for cybersecurity to help utilities. And our mission overall is to help utilities be more reliable so that you have a better, safer grid. And how we do that is using technology and services to reduce the risk of non-compliance, improve performance, resilience, ROI. Okay, so I'm not going to dwell on this. Here's just an example of some of the customers. We have some of the top companies. We have hundreds of customers in terms of the utilities. 100% of the nuclear industry has been touched by us as a trusted advisor. And of course, we have literally hundreds of NERC compliant entities we work with. And many of them, we manage their whole NERC compliance program. So soup to nuts, software, services, everything. Okay, so high level kind of quick look. When you look at generation, transmission, and distribution, here's kind of where we play. The red box, if you move forward, the yellow box is really more the compliance piece. The blue circles are more examples of work at substations for digitization, and then cybersecurity is kind of covering the whole bit. Okay, so that was the piece of the Certrec introduction, and now let's talk just a little bit about some of the research that's been done. And we've been looking at we've been doing some secondary research over the last 6 months, looking at what's happening with utilities, and some of the interesting research that popped up includes this summary from McKinsey. And McKinsey is essentially saying that the digital utility of the future will capture opportunities all along the value chain, and anywhere from, on the left-hand side, pure generation, all the way to the consumer on the far right on the bottom of this picture, which is sort of kind of down here. So in the box that I've labeled 1, really kind of speaks to what we're going to be talking about today. And the main things that they have gleaned in their study is that data-driven asset strategies will include preventive and condition-based maintenance and predictive outage. And they will also offer automated controls that improve resilience, safety, and efficiency. And that kind of flows into digital data, essentially, having more data available in number 2 down here on the left, where your back office decisions and your automation are becoming more data-driven, right? Because now you have more data. You have a lot more data out there being obtained in an automated way, maybe with robots. And that also plays in with giving the field workforce more information that's also digitized. And the end result of all this is that on the bottom here in the blue is that many utilities, see the digital revolution as a threat to their business model. But the ones who treat it as an opportunity are bound to thrive. They will extend their leadership as they transform themselves beyond all the others, and the others will be left behind. And so this is a really important aspect. It's something that they've looked at, they've done research, they've looked at companies and actually looked at what the companies are doing. And in fact, that is what I want to show in the next slide, which is what IBM did. So if you look at the next slide, IBM's research has indicated that the people that are already, the companies, the utilities that are already adopting digital technologies are outperforming the industry. And typically, if you look on the bottom right-hand side here in this blue box here, they identified a core of companies, utilities that are doing that. And that's 52 of the total 240 utilities that they surveyed, which were a mix of, generators, transmission companies, as well as distribution and executives from all of these companies. So CXO level people, CEOs, CTOs, CFOs, those kinds of people. And what they discovered, which is very, very telling, is that these companies who were the core were in the top 30% for lost downtime, for service interruptions per customer, and for service restoration time accuracy. So they were performing really well. And on the left-hand side here with this red box, they were 2 times more profitable than the other electric power utilities. And in fact, if you look at the right-hand side there, the box that shows their gross margins were 2.5 times higher. On the far right, there's a little graph there that shows that their cost per employee in thousands of dollars was actually 25% lower. So they were running with lower cost per employee, and yet they were producing 2.5 times gross margin higher than the others. And that at the same time as their revenue per employee was about the same. So cost was much lower, profitability was much higher. And so that sort of gives an example of, 2 different pieces of research. But what we have also found, if we go to the next slide, what we found is that our customers are facing a ton of challenges, right? And the challenges, a bunch of them are driven by the factors on the right-hand side. There are demands, right? To increase your safety, increase reliability, increase the availability of the offering, of the power supply. We are facing that today, in fact, right? We've got like winter storm warnings all across the country, and there is a pressure on all the power stations to continue providing that power so people don't, lose power and end up in trouble. So that demand up there, the fact that they may or may not know how their equipment is doing, the fact that regulatory compliance is always on top of them, and it's kind of hard to track sometimes. And sometimes there's limited staff out there as well in these utilities. Those are some of the things that are driving the issues and challenges they face on the left-hand side. So the issues and challenges include the risk of accidents and mistakes, the insufficient ability to monitor operations, increased risk of regulatory fines, and then, of course, what everybody hates, which is exactly what we don't want during the snowstorm, is the unplanned downtime. Nobody wants systems going down. I think I just recently heard there were 10,000 customers in Texas without electricity right now. So those are the kinds of issues that are being faced by our customers. They've got to improve their resiliency, reliability, safety, and then be able to track all of this and be able to perform when the weather turns bad. So let me just kind of close this section off before Kay presents her piece, and just talk a little bit about what we're doing together with IBM and Certrec. And so I'll bring Kay in on this as well. Kay, please feel free to add a couple of words here on what IBM is doing, and then I'll kind of talk a little bit more about Certrec as well.
Yeah, so our focus has been on working with the Spot robots from Boston Dynamics and building solutions that complement those, making the robots more intelligent and better integrated into enterprise applications like EAM systems. And we bring a ton of AI capabilities, a constant stream of new innovation, and what we call mobile edge analytics, which is being able to interpret images and sounds and other sensor information on the fly as it's coming in, and understand what's going on and be able to notify people immediately. So I'll go into more detail about that in a few minutes.
That's fantastic. Thank you for that. And on the Certrec side, I've already mentioned, we do a lot in compliance and software applications and services, and we are also providing digitization managed services. So that's the piece where we believe we can help a lot with IBM's help. We can help to operate, run, and manage some of the pilots and some of the production areas for using Spot, in utilities. So many of our customers are utilities, and we have great understanding of their business, etc. So let's move on to the next section here. And before we even begin this, I would like to really give Kay just a few minutes to kind of give her background before she starts on this. And before we even do that, I should just say that my background, briefly, is that I've spent a lot of time in the tech sector on the technology software side of things, but also in the last few years on compliance, regulation, and then being able to develop new businesses around digitization and improving, essentially growing businesses. So Kay, it's all yours, but please give us a quick intro on your background before we begin. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. And first of all, I want to acknowledge Nancy Greco is my technology partner in our robotics solutions, and she was not able to make it today. She and I work together all the time. We are kind of joined at the hip, and so I will cover for all of this, and then if we have questions we can't answer and we need her help, we'll figure out a follow-up to this. So
that's great. Thank you.
Our apologies for that. I am our global partner for robotics solutions, but let me just kind of go back in time. So I came from the utility industry. I worked for a utility that doesn't exist today because it was absorbed into another utility. And that utility I used to work for when they first hired me was Carolina Power and Light, and then it became Progress Energy, and then it became part of Duke Energy, and maybe there were some evolutionary steps in between those as well that I'm skipping. But so I think maybe there was somebody from Duke Energy joining the call. So hello, maybe we met sometime in the past. So I have about well, let's just not say how many years, but many years in maintenance management systems and asset-oriented asset performance management systems. And I have played many roles in that within IBM. And I have also got an advanced degree from National Defense University in National Resource Strategy, which is really looking at how industry and military and general government all play together, including the utilities industry. So I kind of have that macro view of things as well as the technology view. So I'm really pleased to be here today talking with you. And I think now I have control of the screen. Yeah, here we are. So let me talk about IBM and Boston Dynamics. As I may have mentioned, we started partnering with Boston Dynamics 2 years ago. And we did that. We started talking to them about that because we saw the opportunity for people to augment their workforce with the Spot robots, which you see pictured here of Boston Dynamics. And the idea is that those robots would perform jobs that are less suitable for humans, either hard to hire people, as Faz noted, in certain positions, or the jobs are just dull, dirty, or dangerous. And in the utility industry, there's lots of dangerous places and jobs to do, as you guys well know. including radiated areas or potential high voltage areas. There's here where in the picture you see a substation, might be very remote, and the one utility I worked with told me they had more than 20 pages of checklists for their substation, and so having a person that's going and checking the box on 20 pages of a list is a pretty dull job, and it can be error prone, and having a robot doing at least some of that really helps in terms of getting very accurate data. It also helps in terms of generating digital data as opposed to the analog checkboxes on a piece of paper. And that gets really important down the road. So we'll touch on that a bit. Boston Dynamics is the world leader in mobile robots. And we're constantly amazed at the continuing innovation that they bring to the market. There are multiple payloads that you can put on these robots. So a payload might be a certain type of camera or a gas sensor or a type of microphone. And they have an ecosystem of partners that is constantly developing new payloads and integrating them into the robot. And then they can be teleoperated. You can set up autonomous missions. Many utilities, and I'm sure that many people on this call, many utilities have experimented with spot robots and used them in various places. And so you're probably aware that you can do auto walks with them where you're automating it, going and doing a round of inspections. So IBM's value to this is the AI and edge intelligence that we bring to the table. Our IBM research team has been closely involved with my team in generating new kinds of AI to interpret and really get better information out of thermal images, out of doing analog gauge reading, for example. Lots of people do these things. And I'll take analog gauge reading as an example. Lots of people you can go out there and you can get some open source software that's AI based to read analog gauges. And that's great in a laboratory, in an environment where the gauges are all the same and they're all perfect. But what about when you go outside and you can't depend on the exact light or the position of the sun, or there are clouds, or there's weather, or there's cracked glass, or there's a broken needle, or there's perhaps some moisture inside the glass. All those things make that a very difficult thing to do when you're dealing with the real world. And that's where IBM Research has helped us tremendously and figures out those hard problems. That's what they're there for. We also have a scalable and secure platform for moving data from the robot to the server or to the cloud. This is extremely important because this is sensitive information. You need to make sure that that data is being handled in an extremely secure manner. You want to be able to integrate it to your enterprise management system, enterprise asset systems, so that you can take action. It doesn't do anybody any good to have a robot going and gathering data if you're not getting the results of that data quickly and acting on that. And so the idea is that we automate a lot of that process and get that data into a system that will send a technician to go deal with a problem as quickly as possible. But we do it in a way that's secure. And then we've pre-built integration with multiple work management systems. So as an example, Maximo, SAP PM, Oracle EAM, Salesforce Field Service. There are others out there, but those are the kind of the big dogs. And then if we run into others that we need to integrate with, well, we have experience doing that. It's pretty straightforward for us to do, and it can be done in a matter of a few weeks. So now I'm going to show you a video. This is really quick. And I know that some of you have robots, some of you don't. This is just sort of giving you a picture of what they're like in an industrial environment. So you saw Spot walking around there. We thought we'd give you a list of how Spot's currently being used by utilities today. So things like obviously operator rounds, but safety inspections, I think that's a really interesting one. And you saw Spot taking a look at a fire extinguisher in the video. And actually that's something that IBM created. So the very first thing that we did with Spot actually, and we taught it using AI to recognize when a fire extinguisher is off the hook, when something's blocking it, when it's missing a tag, or if everything's okay. So it can go and do the safety inspections and understand what it's seeing. Digitizing facilities. So some organizations use Spot with the camera or with the LiDAR camera to build a digital twin of the inside of their facilities. You can put, as I mentioned before, you put a gas sensor on it and check for SF6 and H2S. We look at thermal anomalies. One of the most common payloads for Spot is the 360 pan tilt zoom camera with an infrared camera involved in it or incorporated. And again, we've done some really good work in helping to deal with all the light outside issues with thermal imaging, like what I talked about with analog gauge reading. Visual inspection, being able to understand what it's looking at as you see a pipeline here, you can walk through a tunnel and look for leaks, look for gas. It's used heavily in nuclear to be able to go into more dangerous areas. It's used around high voltage switches. There's actually a organization in Europe that is getting Spot with an arm to be able to flip a switch. That's not always the easiest thing to do, but they want to do that because they had a history of it arcing and they don't want people anywhere near it. And then we're teaching it how to identify rust and corrosion that might indicate leaks. So those are great examples. I want to give you another example. So IBM is not just a technology company. We are a manufacturing company. We have a huge campus in Poughkeepsie, New York, where we manufacture mainframes and power boxes. And one of the things that we also have on that campus is a wastewater treatment plant to manage the runoff from that manufacturing process. So these are pictures of things from situations in that plant that we're teaching Spot to read. So the first one is a different kind of analog gauge. So just another version of it that we can easily teach it. And then you've got some crystalline buildup, which is indicating a leak at a juncture point. And then on the right, those pipes have sulfuric acid running through them, as you see in the label on those. And those pads at the joints are pH pads. So if there's a leak, they start to turn red. And we are teaching Spot how to determine if the pads are turning red. Those are examples. There are probably 20 use cases that we're working on in our wastewater treatment plant today. We have Spot running automated missions there. And what's interesting about that plan is it's actually an ideal situation for using a Spot robot. It's a largely unmanned plant. It's oftentimes not heated. It's not it's not pleasant to go work in a water treatment plant. It can be dangerous, and we have a hard time. We would have a hard time hiring anybody to go work in a plant location like that anyway. But if that plant goes down, our manufacturing stops. It's absolutely critical. And that whole campus is located on the banks of the Hudson River. So nothing can be released to the environment. So it's very critical that all our equipment works and stays working in that plant. So having Spot constantly monitor that is a real value for us. We actually have started bringing customers there. We have a briefing center on site. We talk about what we're doing and then bring them over to the plant to see it in action for themselves. So now I'm going to talk about the value journey with Spot. As I mentioned before, a lot of organizations, and especially energy and utilities, have 1 or 2 or 3 spots. Some of them 4 or 5. But they have not really operationalized them. They may do one job with them. They may be operator controlled. They may have set up some automated missions. There is so much more that can be done. And when I talk to utilities, they say, well, yeah, but how do I build the business case for that? And one of the things I tell them is, well, if you're trying to build a business case on labor savings, just don't do that. You're not going to be successful. You have to build your business case based on safety and security and compliance and business continuity, equipment reliability, all of those bigger picture things, which all carry a huge potential cost if they're not done right. That's how you justify a Spot. And so it's a different thing than just saving labor. And one of the things we talked about is you may be understaffed. That's something that Faz mentioned. Well, the reason that organizations are understaffed these days is bigger than, hey, we just haven't hired people. There's the demographic change that's going on in the world where people are retiring faster than we can hire and train new people in, but it's a smaller pool of people to draw from to bring into organizations. So there's a lot of things that are happening to get more automated and to be able to deal with that and to deal with the lost knowledge that goes out the door when the most experienced people retire. So that's another thing where it's not a matter of labor saving, it's whether you could do the job at all. So the value journey starts with manual and tele-operated robot inspection, and you can do that out of the box with Spot. And then auto walk missions, which are where you teach Spot to go to multiple assets and inspect those. And again, out of the box. Then you get to robotic perception, and I'll talk about that in a second, and enterprise integration and scaling it. And those are much more, I don't want to say difficult, but much more involved. They take more time, and it's oftentimes where people kind of get a little bit hung up. So let's look at the value proposition here. So in teleoperated robot inspection, you have an operator that's running Spot. They're walking around, they're looking at an asset, they're collecting some raw data about that asset, could be pictures, could be thermal images, and then they're manually reviewing that for anomalies. So they may be using some tools to sift through that data. And then if they find a problem, they will enter it into an EAM system and have a maintenance technician go out and perform some work, whether it's following up and taking a second look or bringing some tools and parts out there to go deal with a potential problem. And the value of that is you got the robot going where an operator can't or shouldn't go, whether that's a dangerous area or pristine area, or it's a remote area where you just don't have a person stationed there. And then we get into auto walk missions, and that's where Spot is trained to look at multiple assets, and a mission is triggered automatically. And so the value of that is you don't have that one-to-one relationship between Spot and an operator. So the operator can go off and do other things while Spot's doing its job. And Spot is highly consistent and can do more frequent inspections. And you can start to identify trends in real time. So what do I mean by it's highly consistent? When Spot learns to do these missions, it will go to the exact same point, the exact same angle, and get that data, get that picture, get that thermal image, get that sound, whatever it is. So by being that consistent, you can much more easily spot trends. And ultimately, you're impacting equipment reliability and sustainability. But now let's talk about robotic perception. That is where you apply AI. So on Spot, there is a processor called the Core IO. And we can put AI models, artificial intelligence models, right on that Core IO. And as that robot is collecting that data, it's running it through those models, and those models are interpreting what it sees. So now it's creating inferences. The model infers that there is or isn't a problem. And then those inferences, instead of all the raw data, those inferences can be sent to a dashboard, and an analyst can look at that dashboard. So it's much less time spent by the analyst, much less time and effort looking for that needle in a haystack. And then the maintenance tech gets sent out to inspect and repair. So the value here is reduced time and labor to identify problems, meaning potential reduced equipment downtime, reduced data transmission because you're sending across inferences and not necessarily all this raw data across a network. You can still archive all that data, but you can do that later. And then reduce lag time for action and mean time for repair. So this is really shortening the cycle. It is reducing some labor. So I'm not saying that you wouldn't reduce labor, but it's really the cycle time that you're after here. And then enterprise integration. So here, what we're saying is that Spot could find something, and it could be important enough to automatically generate a work order. And so automatically integrate to that enterprise asset management system, whatever is in place. And the value there is that now things are even faster, but you can also combine that data that Spot got with other sources of information, like asset history, or maybe there's a SCADA system attached to that asset, and there's other sensor data that's available. So you can get a much more complete picture of what's going on with that equipment. You can get that detail into the hands of the technicians so they know the right tools and parts to bring when they go to deal with the problem. And you're building a foundation for root cause analysis. So now finally, we scale it. So you're talking about multiple use cases. So one robot can do multiple things. You can manage multiple robots as a fleet. And you can replicate this across multiple sites, but bring it all back to a single pane of glass to see what's going on across your organization. And why do you do it? Why do you do that? Because then you're leveraging the foundation you built with the single robot, single use cases, and then adding on to that to implement this faster and easier at new sites. So you're accelerating your return on investment. So and so we'll pause. This is the picture that really is what it looks like when you operationalize these robots and incorporate them into your IT and security infrastructure. All right, so I'm going to hand it back to Faz, and we're going to have a few kind of wrap-up comments and take questions. Faz, over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Kay. That was very, very good, very well explained, especially the part about the enterprise asset management system that plays right into what I was discussing, that McKinsey and IBM had looked at how people are digitizing in utilities, because the information is traveling and is kind of getting together with lots of other pieces of information. At this time, Brandon, do we have any questions on chat? And I don't see any, but if we don't, then I have some questions for you, Kay. So the first one that strikes me is, and you mentioned some of the reasons, but what is the payback? Like in a few words, what is the payback for a utility to try to consider even deploying a spot or a team of spots?
Well, it's going to be different based on the use case and the situation. So it's very, very dependent on the utility and the situation. But
right.
And so we had a really good discussion with an insurance company, and one of their risk engineers was deeply involved with utilities. And so they look at it from a business continuity standpoint and a regulatory standpoint. So, they're going to look at things like, what's the risk to your revenue? What's the possibility of downtime or more downtime? Can we reduce that with the robot? Can we reduce planned outages with robots? I talked to one utility about sending the robot into a nuclear plant ahead of an outage, or stationing it there to try to get information that would reduce the outage by even a half day. When an outage costs $1 million a day, that's a really no-brainer ROI. So there are many of those. Human worker safety is a big one too, though. You have to look at what incidents have happened in the past, where have they happened, what caused those, and can we use Spot to avoid those kinds of incidents. And you can look at the cost of those kinds of things. Your insurance company will know what those cost. So it's a very interesting area to really start to look into.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. That sounds very good. I particularly like the fact that you've got two examples there. One is reducing risk and enhancing continuity, and then the other one is human worker safety. And the cost of an outage is very high. And if you can reduce that by a few hours, even, you could probably reclaim your investment in this infrastructure probably within days. Here's a question that we're getting. What are some of the challenges in deploying Spot?
Okay, that is a great question. And I will start by saying most organizations start by buying one or two spots, and they buy them under an innovation fund. An innovation team buys it. And so they try them out. And then they get to, wow, well, this works. So we need to get the operation side of the business excited about this. And, and maybe they are able to do that, or maybe it's, well, hey, we have other fish to fry and you didn't include us in the first place. And, why are you dragging us in now? And why didn't you get us involved at the beginning? And then IT gets wind of it. And I've seen a delay of at least a year where IT got wind of it and said, hey, you didn't involve us at the beginning, and security says you didn't involve us at the beginning, and this is sensitive data, and now we need to think about how that should interact with our organization, and we also need to decide who's in charge here and who's going to pay for it, and all these things that have nothing to do with the value proposition, but more to do with just the mechanism for how it gets done and how who's in charge, how it gets paid for, and how do we make it secure. So that's where I see one of the biggest challenges to operationalizing this, and that's why IBM spent a lot of time and money building capabilities and certifying those, pen testing those, making sure they're secure, so that when you start having those conversations with IT and security and with operations, you've got some answers, you've got a framework to work with, and not just scratching your head saying, oh, I didn't realize that would be a problem. So you got to kind of think ahead on these things. Other challenges are, there's some physical challenges like battery life. A battery lasts 90 minutes. There are self-charging stations available. It's very quick and easy to switch out batteries, but you have to take that into account. Battery technology is moving forward at a rapid pace. You can see that with the plethora of electric vehicles that are coming to the market, et cetera. So that's something that's going to be a kind of a moving target and constantly improving. And there are also challenges around where what you have the robot do. So you don't want to have it in an area where there's a bunch of people, and you don't want it to be kind of out in the public. You want it safe. So that's, I see another question out there too.
Yes, go ahead, please.
I'll go with that. Can you provide any insights into resistance to change, mainly driven by employees who understandably do not want to lose their jobs to automation? I'll tell you a story. So we went out to a substation and did a tour, and the pandemic was still going on, but things were starting to calm down, and we had done all our work with this company remotely, but finally we were able to go out to a substation. And my colleague Nancy went out there, and she was talking to a couple of the guys that are the reliability engineers and that do the inspection work out there. And initially they were, they had their arms crossed and they weren't too sure about this and so forth. And then as she was telling them what the robot could do and pointing out, kind of how quickly it could do it, they were starting to realize that, hey, their backlog for inspections is huge. They can't get to everything. And all of a sudden they were like, oh, the robot could do some of that for me. And I could focus on more important things, and it could do the really dull, repetitive stuff I don't want to have to do. Oh, all of a sudden they were coming up with ideas on what else could they have it do and so forth. So I think this is really a matter of understanding where this robot plays, and the fact that it's not meant to replace people. It's meant to extend the capabilities of your maintenance team and to gather data that's maybe not getting gathered today, or maybe not getting gathered in a way that's consistent or the way you need it, or in the frequency that you need it. So it's really a member of the team and not replacing somebody on the team.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at that, because technology can help. It doesn't necessarily replace, but augment the people, so they can be doing more interesting work while the dull, dirty stuff is carried out by the robot. One of the questions that came up not right now, but I came out with me and some customers, was that they're looking at drones to do something similar. What is your thought on that, Kay?
Well, drones play a really important role in inspection for utilities and for civil infrastructure and for lots of other uses. And we actually have a research team focused on drone technology. And we have converged that team with our robotic solutions team, because what we see is you need to tie together what you're doing with drones and what you're doing with Spot and maybe what you're doing with other ways of gathering data, and get that data into a common platform where you can see it all and you can take action. And so we are going through a series of discussions with our drone team around the details of that. And what we found is that there's a lot of complementary capabilities that we've built on either side of that, and not that much overlap, but a common data platform seems like a really straightforward thing for us to provide. And I talked about the data platform that we've created for Spot, and we're seeing that with maybe a few tweaks could become the data platform for drone data as well. So that's the path we're going on, and we're actually getting a drone out at our Poughkeepsie facility as well, so that we can start experimenting and demonstrating that.
That's really great. If we have any customers out there who'd like to experiment, I think we're ready to help you. We've been looking at drones as well. Drones and the robot, I think, gives you pretty much everything you need from a physical, aerial standpoint. Because if you have a solar farm, you might have the drone coming on the top, and then you might have Spot coming on the bottom, right? Okay, I think that we don't have any more questions. Unless there are any more questions, since I'm looking at the time here, I can proceed with the kind of the remainder of this presentation, and then we can sort of see if there are any other last questions or not. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. And I think it was the panel slide. So we're already doing kind of the panel right now with questions with Kay. So let's go to the next one. Any chat submissions? Okay, so the kind of the conclusions, kind of at a high level. Change is coming. It's going to happen anyway. The ones who adopt some of that might get advantages from it. Let's go to the next slide. Well, this is kind of a summary, which some of what Kay has said, but there is a lot of complexity right out there in terms of utilities and repairing and fixing things and understanding the problem. So robots would help to capture that complexity, digitally gather complex information, undertake detailed inspections using all kinds of technology. So they could be thermal imaging, which was mentioned, gas sensing, light sensing, even EM sensing, electromagnetic. So that's an example of capturing complexity. Next slide, please. So basically, again, tackling repetitive tasks. I think the way Kay said it was kind of dull, dirty, boring, mundane jobs. And it can do it again and again. And it can do it while it reduces any mistakes and records information accurately and in detail. That's a good use of a robot, right? Doesn't have the intelligence of a human being. And so next slide, please. Improving safety was another one that was discussed. Undertaking dangerous tasks. This could be obviously in a place where there's high voltage or other radiation or other kinds of issues. But safety is definitely another area that's an advantage by using a robot. Next, please. And then from our standpoint, we've been doing this for a long time, enhancing compliance, the ability to gather complex evidence, store it, and be able to regurgitate it appropriately when you need it, makes everything more systematic, reducing the risk of penalties, reducing the risk of reputational damage, and other issues. Sometimes the penalties happen, and then you're on the list for NERC to be scrutinized for the next 2 years, costing you extra money in legal, in operations. And then there's a whole cost of recovery once you've had penalties. The penalties might be $200,000, but the recovery might take, another $500,000 just to recover from that. So those are just some examples. But let me try to go to the final sort of summary here, which is again research from IBM in this case. And this is the discussion we had about core performers in utilities. And the main thing is that if you look at pattern 1 and pattern 2 on the left-hand side, the digitizing of assets is in pattern 1, and in pattern 2, there's digitizing of interactions. On the right, I've tried to summarize that essentially. So the digital tools and the automation can intelligently monitor, upgrade infrastructure, improve workforce safety and efficiency, reduce mistakes, and increase responsiveness for the plant, for the utility, and reduce the risk of non-compliance, obviously, with all the other issues that carries with it. So those are some of the reasons why we'd even look at helping to digitize aspects of the workflow within utilities, and robots are an amazing way to do that. So let me just take to the last slide there. And just the high level conclusion really is robots and drones can help improve safety, performance, and compliance potentially. Certainly what Kay has discussed with us points to the fact that we can improve resilience and compliance with the AI power behind it. And then I want to just make this offer out there. Kay and I discussed this. We together, IBM, Certrec, Kay, please add your words to this as well. We would be delighted if you have more questions, if you want to run a mini clinic with us where maybe you say, hey, I've got an idea of deploying this. We could maybe go through that with you and work out how it could actually work from a, maybe from a justification standpoint, maybe from a planning standpoint, how you could deploy this kind of innovation. Kay, do you have any words on that?
Yeah, so we do that all the time. And, usually we can do those remotely, we can do those on site. Just kind of depends on the situation and what maybe prior relationship we might have with your organization. And usually those are great. They're not meant for us to just tell you how to do things. They're meant for us to have a really impactful dialogue with you and help ideate on what not only would be high impact with this, but what would be feasible for you. So very, very happy to work with Faz and set those up if you want the kind of a deeper dive, or if you want to figure out what would make sense in your environment, or if you're using Spot today and you want to talk further about what can we do on top of that? How can we build on that and get more value from the Spot robots that we have?
That's great. By the way, we have one more question from Alex. What are some use cases for Spot at substations?
Absolutely. One of the biggest use cases at a substation that we've been working with utility on is thermal imaging. We started with hinges, clips, and switches, and now we'll be moving forward to transformers, and I forget a couple other kinds of assets, but there are many different kinds of assets. And we actually had a whole list of inspection points at substations that we haven't even been able to fully explore. So there's anything you can think of, we can probably talk about for substations. They are really a great place to put a Spot. The other thing that we are exploring is having a kind of a doghouse for Spot, a place where it can stay at a substation and be stationed there, keeping it out of the elements when necessary, and then letting it go out and do automated missions as needed. So that's kind of probably the next step that we're looking at and that people are exploring.
That's great. Thank you, Kay. One other question came in. Where will we be able to access the recording of this webinar? Please send an email to marketing@certrec.com. and we will get you the video. I think there are no other questions. I just want to really thank Kay and Nancy, even though Nancy's not here, she's put work into this as well. I think this is the team, this kind of the world class sort of world expert team on Spot and deploying Spot, into these kinds of environments. And so really, really thankful for you guys to be working with us and to be here for the webinar. Appreciate that a lot. And if we go to the last slide, these are just some areas where you can get further resources. As I said, if you want to get some help in understanding the digitization, the robotics business case, for example, contact us, digitization@certrec.com. We'll work with IBM to help you there. And then there are many other links here, from the Spot video with operating specs to the Boston Dynamics nuclear panel discussion that'll answer a lot of questions about how Spot might be used in a nuclear situation, radiation study, and the IBM Institute for Business Value, the report there on digitizing electric utilities. So anyway, there's a lot to be thinking about here, and we really appreciate everybody joining us. We're right on top of the hour right now, and we look forward to hearing more from you. And I hope that everybody enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Faz, for hosting this. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Kay. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Okay.